Hello, Doug morning to you. Welcome to the good world. I'm Seth, that's Charlie. We are on the way to the dog park. I know, Charlie is very dog-exasperated this morning. Yeah, I know. It's my birthday. Happy birthday to me. I'm 39. The thing I know Charlie. Charlie is mostly dog-exasperated because since it's my birthday, I decided to let myself sleep in a little, and so we are slow moving. Also, Susie got up this morning and went and got me donuts for my birthday. Multiple donuts, like a box of them, not all for me to eat, which is good because I would, but for me to eat some of and to bring the rest to my dog park friends. So that's what's happening. But Charlie has a lot of feelings about that because, I wasn't awake for a while, and then Susie woke up early and left the house to go and get the donuts and then come back. And so Charlie is just very, very outraged. Yeah. He's gonna be a little beepy. So it goes. Yeah. So I'm 39 today, and I like. A thing that brings up in my memory is there was a play by, I think it's Samuel Beckett, called Crap's Last Tape, and it's about a old, I don't remember exactly how old, but it's about an old man who records tapes. Back when that's how you recorded audio, records tapes of his thoughts and his life. It's sort of an audio diary. This guy is waving me through. A little bit of tree work going on. Thank you. When I was, I know Charlie, when I was, I guess, 19, I spent the summer at Williamstown Theater Festival, which is a big summer theater festival in Williamstown, Massachusetts, and they have a whole training program for young actors, and so I was an apprentice, and one of the other apprentices at some point approached me about performing Crap's Last Tape. It's a solo show, and he wanted to direct it, and he wanted me to play Crap, and so I did. And one of the opening things is Crap is listening to it. It cuts back and forth between him listening to an older tape of himself, and the older tape starts with him saying 39 today. It's on his 39th birthday, and so it's my 39th birthday, and there's a small part of me that's like, I don't think I'm ever gonna get back into acting, and I think it's very unlikely that I will perform Crap's Last Tape at any point, but there's definitely part of me that's like, it's my 39th birthday. Maybe I should just sit down and do a recording of the younger man's part from Crap's Last Tape, and then if I decide when I'm older that I want to do something with that, I'll just have it. I'll have that audio in the bank. Probably not gonna do it. Probably not I think I have pretty effectively let go of the acting bug, but it is funny how your brain makes connections between things, and there you are. Excuse me. Yeah, that's good stuff. I love to watch YouTube and get someone else's bodily functions. Sorry, just blowing my nose because there's just tree spooge all over the place. It is pollen season in a big way. One of the trees in our backyard just keeps shooting off these little wisps of pollen. And it's pretty, but it's also well, that's gonna get in my eyes. Yeah. I know, Charlie. Yes, you do have the wind machine. Yeah, so that is all of that. Birthday, me, etc. what I want to talk about, though, is it's actually something that's pretty different from the subject of me or the subject of acting or any number of subjects that I might normally. No, it's very much in line actually with a lot of the subjects I usually talk about. But it's been top of mind, and it's been a thing that has come up in a number of conversations recently. And the subject is rules. Rules, laws, those kinds of frameworks, legal frameworks, or not even, I don't know. There are rules that are not, I guess, necessarily like legal rules, but just like, policies of a place or whatever. So very, very often, we hear people saying things like, oh, those people think the rules don't apply to them, or like, just follow the rules. Why can't you just follow the rules, or things like that? And the problem is that most of us didn't choose the rules, and so like when we're just told to follow them, that's not actually necessarily a thing that's like, tyranny is a really extreme word for it, but like if you are just existing and someone's like, well, the rule is you have to do this, follow the rules, you're just there and someone just like threw a rule at you and demanded that you follow it. Like, the existence of a rule is not necessarily there's not necessarily like any form of justice in that, especially if the rules are imposed from outside. And we have a system in America for making rules, and there are systems in other countries that have, in some cases, small differences, and in some cases, large differences. But people have rules and laws, and it's not that I think we should abolish all of the rules and laws, because I don't think, maybe humanity will get there in hundreds or thousands of years, but we're certainly not there. And as much as I am an optimist about what is possible if we open our minds and our hearts, I think it's pretty unlikely that we will be able to do away with rules in my lifetime, and that's fine. But, if you look at a situation, for example, like my home and my marriage, we don't have a lot of rules that you are expected to follow. I don't know that we have any. We have agreements that we make, right? Generally speaking, Susie cooks and I do the dishes, although when I cook, she does the dishes. So the agreement is sort of whoever doesn't cook does the dishes. And there are sort of, different tasks that each of us has in just as like chores around the day, and it's not a rule, it's just an agreement between the two of us. And the thing that enforces it isn't, it's a rule and you have to follow it. The thing that enforces it is, I've given my word that I will do this thing, and I care about you, and I don't want to break my word, and I don't want to let you down, so we're just going to do the thing. Which is a much stronger motivation for following rules than just the rules exist, you have to follow the rules. I would say a larger problem with rules is that they become so I think one of the main values of rules, since I'm going to say a lot of things that are wrong with them, I should mention a thing that is really valuable about rules is they codify what our norms are supposed to be, right? They take things that, like social agreements, and they sort of put it into writing, and they say like, this is the thing we're all going to agree to go by, and like maybe you didn't specifically choose it, but sort of we're going to collectively agree that this is a thing that we think is right. And we obviously there are all kinds of disagreements about specifics, but I do think that the rules of a society help shape the culture and vice versa. And I think a lot of our issues. Right, my phone ran out of space. I really need to start remembering to clear out the old files. So I don't know exactly where it cut off, but basically rules help shape culture, culture helps shape rules, and there's a very symbiotic, mutually constructive relationship between rules and culture. And I think a huge part of what is broken about our culture has to do not just with our rules, but with it comes from the culture side. It has a lot to do with the way that we sort of, the way that our culture interacts with rules and vice versa. But I think there is a lot that is wrong with our rules, but I think that fixing the rules would not do enough. And so that's sort of why I left politics and am doing this, because I'm trying to, I think maybe I can have a better cultural influence than I can a rules-based influence, because policy details are not my strong point. Details are not my strong point. But, thinking big and stepping back and dreaming big is a big part of what I can do, so here we are. Anyway, a big part of the problem with rules, and this actually relates very much to what I was saying the other day about data and the way that people use data to make decisions, is that we often use rules as a way to avoid having to think about something challenging. Right? It's rules become a substitute for morality, where we just say, well, I was just following the rules. I did, sure, I may have completely screwed over another person. I may have destroyed something for my own personal gain, but it was within the rules, and so you can't blame me. I followed the rules. And that is missing the point entirely, as far as I am concerned, right? The rules are not perfect, and they don't exist, well, I don't know, I guess they, in a sense, they exist to tell you what you can walk right up to the front of, but the system is not able to punish you for a thing is not at all the same as the thing being good. And, if you want to do something that is harmful but legal, then so be it. But, be honest with yourself. Be honest with other people. Don't bullshit around it. Just accept the fact that you did a thing that was selfish and harmful because you could. I think if we were honest about those things, it would get us a lot farther. Really, a thing that's fascinating about human beings is we are so desperate to be good that we will lie to ourselves to convince ourselves that things are good. We care far more about that than we actually do about the personal gain that we get. Because we actually, on a gut level, we do kind of understand the moral universe. I know, Charlie. But yeah, the problem is, gonna have to wait for this guy to go. I know, we're almost there. The problem is that we so often just, if we're trying to make a decision, we don't think about the larger consequences of our decision. We just think, well, do the rules say it's okay? Yes, the rules say it's okay, great. And that kind of intellectual and moral laziness is something that, I've talked about this a lot on here, right? Your brain is lazy. Your brain does not want to think very hard. And rules become another way for your brain to avoid thinking. And so I'm not saying we should throw out the rules, but I am saying when we look at the rules, we should also think about the context, and we should care less specifically about whether something conforms to the rules, and we should care more about the impact of the thing we're trying to do on ourselves, on the world around us. And that's harder. It takes more thought, but you can do it. But the problem is that we have built an entire system around the idea that the rules are the most important thing. The rules are everything, and none of that other stuff matters. And there are a lot of people in my life who are lawyers. my wedding party, when I got married, my side of the wedding included 6 people, 3 of whom, it's 5 friends, plus my brother, who is both brother and friend. But of the non-blood relations, 3 of the 5 are lawyers. My brother also has a law degree, but is not a practicing lawyer. And my dad is a lawyer, so lots of lawyers in my life. And when I was an economic consultant, I also worked with the lawyers on a bunch of litigations. Okay, I can fit in here. And I know, Charlie. And the problem is that our system is set up to say that the rules are all that matter, but also if you can afford a corporate lawyer, you can be far more effective at going around the rules than most people. And so, hey, that's how you end up with a lot of inequality, both in terms of wealth and in terms of power. And it's a big, entire broken system. We'll talk more about this when we come back, but we're at the dog park and Charlie has beeps. I know. Okay, we'll be right back. Hi. I just figured I would look as crazy as possible just to completely discredit anything that I say. But if you were enjoying this video, please click the like button, click the subscribe button, click buttons to make algorithms do algorithm things, and comment if you have comments, and share it with people who you think might enjoy it, and all of those things. Hello, little lizard. There's a little lizard over there. It's lizard season again here in California. Okay, thanks. Hi, welcome back. We are on our way home from the dog park. Some of my dog park friends took donuts, so that's good. Now I only have half a box of donuts to eat. Maybe I'll try to ration them so I don't just eat a whole huge batch of sugar across the next couple days. So yeah. Also, one thing that popped into my head earlier that I thought I would share is that I caught up last night with a good friend of mine who I haven't spoken to in a while. Well, with multiple friends. It's a group of us who lived together for a year in college. But Jesse, who may be listening to this and or watching this, hi Jesse, was telling me a bit of his thoughts on this channel, and said something to the effect of, I know you're leaning into the character with like the sunglasses and the hat, and I was like, no, it's not a character, that's just who I am now. It's just I don't know, it's part of how I have found myself out here. I think it's honestly, when I was a business type, I had a collection of fun, different colored ties, and I sort of enjoyed ties as a way to have a little bit of, a splash of color, and this is, hats and sunglasses are my new way of doing that, I guess. I still like to have that, but, individuality is fine, but this is me now. This is just who I am. At least for the time being, unless and until I change, because we all change all the time. So let's come back to the subject of rules. While we were at the dog park, I got to look, and I'm glad. I mean, you will already know this, but we didn't actually miss a whole lot when the phone overheated. I happened to see it at the right moment. This intersection is always tricky. Here we go. Okay, so rules, lawyers, and this is not a shot at the lawyers in my life. Like, you are all people I love a lot, and all of you are people who are making your way in the system that you have been given, and like the problem is not any of you or any one person. The problem is the entire system is set up to make it so it's set up to incentivize this kind of gaming, and to make it not just a viable career path, but an appealing one, right? Like, I have talked with my dad plenty of times about sort of what he does and doesn't like about his job, and I think, you know, we sort of tend to think of the pay as being the big thing, but like he got into it, frankly, before it was as high paying an industry as it is now, and it's also it was a good and steady career. It's something he's really good at, and all of us enjoy being good at things, and it's you face interesting challenges. I mean, I had this experience when I was an economic consultant. Like, the problems you deal with are interesting. You get to really use your brain and sort of like exercise the problem solving part of your brain and the creative part of your brain, and that's really fun, and like you get to be around good people, so like there's a lot to like about it, and so the problem with it isn't the people who go into the legal field or their choices. The problem is the system being set up in a way that specifically advantages the people who can afford to hire the really good lawyers, and functionally what ends up happening is that those it is mostly but not exclusively large corporations, and like there is the lobbying arm that tries to shape the law to their advantage, and then there's the legal arm that takes the laws as they exist and tries to game that system to their advantage. And so at every step in the process, you have a system where the people who have the most money are able to game the system better than anyone else, and so that means they make more money and other people make less money. And you know, sure, a cut of their profits goes to the lawyers, a cut of their profits goes to the lobbyists, a cut of their profits goes out in the form of campaign donations, but their profits still grow on top of those things, and everyone else collectively suffers. And again, the problem isn't that the corporations are evil, or the lawyers are evil, or the lobbyists are evil. All of these are just people who are just trying to make their way in the world in the same way that any of us are. The problem is the system. The problem is a system that grants that kind of power to that kind of wealth, because when you have more power and are able to use your power to accumulate even more power, you just end up consolidating more power. Like, that is I'm just going to use a calculus term here for a moment. The second derivative of power is more power, right? It is always, it's not just moving towards more power, but the rate at which it attains power is always increasing. And so in my view, one of the best ideas of any system, and this in theory is what the US was founded on, although they didn't have a definition of what counts as a person that lines up with my definition of what counts as a person. I think every person counts as a person. They mostly limited it to landowning white men, and I think that all people are people, but you know, the idea that a system should be about removing power from any one center and spreading it widely is a really, really good idea, and is a thing that, generally speaking, is really good for a society, and is a thing that enables people to flourish, right? Like, autonomy, liberty, these are things that enable people to flourish. I think part of what is hard is that those ideas are really good ones, and I've said in the past, you know, I think only good ideas can be used for harm. I think if an idea is obviously bad, it's sort of tough to get it to catch on. But you can very easily take a good idea like liberty and freedom and decentralized power, and it still can turn into a mechanism for empowering some people at the expense of others. And, you know, honestly, there are multiple ways towards that same harmful end. Right? Like, in America, we have one one version of it where we sort of use liberty and empowerment as carte blanche, just pure unconstrained freedom for people and institutions with wealth and power to accrue more wealth and power, and we act like allowing them, we act like putting a constraint on that power would be an infringement on their liberty, but that's not true, right? If they're taking power away from someone else, then that fact is an infringement on your liberty, right? If your decisions are being forced on you by a large corporation somewhere, that's as much an infringement on your liberty as if those decisions are coming from the government. But you know, it is. I expect that if there are any folks who come from a different political background than I do out there listening to this, they will say, well, you know, what about Stalin? Yeah, Stalin was pretty bad, right? Like, that is also an example of power being centralized in one specific place in a way that does a whole lot of harm. That is a dead deer. That is representative of freedom in America under our corporate tyranny system. And you know, we've sort of been trained by our system. I don't think anyone has consciously gotten us to this point, but we have seen a lot of harm done when power is centralized in one particular part of the government. I don't mind government power as long as it is spread out. I actually think like bureaucratic agencies can be fine as long as power is shared and spread out. A really powerful executive can be harmful, but also a really powerful corporate lobby can be extremely harmful, and we see a lot of that. But we have sort of been put into this false choice between a government that has too much power centered with an individual and an oligarchy that has too much power centered with a small number of wealthy individuals. And neither of those are a good situation, right? The power should be for the people. And the more that we can spread power to people, the more that means we spread liberty to people, the more that means we support people and empower them to flourish. And that's the good world, right? Like that's the society we can have, is one in which everyone flourishes if we stop thinking that we are worthy of deciding who deserves power and who doesn't. One of the biggest things that I've learned is that people who, generally speaking, people who do really awful things, and that includes some of the awful things that I've done myself to other people, people do really awful things out of reaction to feelings of powerlessness. It's not necessarily feeling powerless in that moment. Well, it is not, let me rephrase that. It's not necessarily being powerless in that moment, but it is the trauma of having been powerless in the past, coming back up in a moment that makes you feel powerless now, but then your brain realizes that you have power in this moment, and so then you take your power out on someone who doesn't have it. Because as far as your brain is concerned, that's survival. That's escape. And so that is sort of the way that like trauma and powerlessness perpetuates itself across generations and across time and across people and communities through just taking feelings of disempowerment and taking them out on other people. But that teaches us, our reaction to that is, okay, well, this person is unworthy of power. And you know what? I think they probably are, if they are not in a place where they can get past those feelings, I don't think they should have power over other people. But I still think that they should have power of self-determination. I think everyone deserves power of self-determination, because that's the only way that you can get over those feelings. It takes more than just that, but it's really, really helpful to have that base of freedom and of liberty and of all the things that sort of make us able to find our unique value as human beings. Having those things is one of the most valuable things for empowering us to be able to find something better. And so much of our system is based on the idea that some people deserve the power of self-determination and some people don't and should have their choices determined by someone else. It's interesting because there is, and I'm going to comment at a very surface level about libertarianism. I will admit that I have not read a lot of, deep libertarian thought. But there is a lot that is appealing of the idea of just leaving people to do their own thing. The problem is that idea as practiced is also, it separates the process from the outcome. Right, and it basically says, well, as long as we don't infringe on anyone's power, then whatever happens is fine. But whatever happens ends up being that the people who have power are able to take more power away from the people who don't. And so there are really useful ideas about how good things can be if we liberate everyone. But there is more work that goes into that than just sort of wiping off our hands and letting it go, because the power is just going to keep getting consolidated. I sometimes think of myself as a proponent, and this is again going to be very, very glib and like not super well thought through. But I sometimes think of myself as a proponent of sort of a socialized libertarianism. I think if we had a lot fewer laws and a lot more just systematized redistribution of wealth and power, we could have things a lot better. I honestly think that a randomocracy where people are selected more or less by dice roll to go and represent each other in government could do a lot better than the people who get into positions of power by gaming the system and finding the power centers and exploiting their access to those power centers. Like that just keeps more power in the hands of power. And if we really want the good world, we need to get more comfortable with distributing power and decentralizing power. I think a lot about computing, right? As a data scientist, I've spent a lot of time sending my code to run in the cloud, across and distributing my code across multiple processing nodes. And there's a really powerful metaphor there for the way that we do work as humans and the way that we could work as humans, which is that imagine humanity as a computer processor with I know, Charlie. We're gonna get on in just a minute. Imagine humanity as a big computer processor. Each of us is one core of that processor, right? That means each one of us can do one task at a time, which is basically true. Some of us, I can kind of multitask, but like it's not effective. I can do it, but it's not an effective way for me to solve problems. And certainly I can handle more than, at the most, like 2 tasks at a time. And I'm not going to do either of them great. And the more tasks I have, the less good I'm going to be at any of them. And that's true for all of us. And we have, so let's say there are 7 billion cores in your processor, 7.5 billion cores in your processor. Each core represents a person that can do one thing at a time. Our society is designed to say, okay, these cores are good and should get to do the most work and be incentivized to do the most work and be rewarded for doing the most work. And these cores are bad and should just be controlled and judged by the other cores. And think about how much better, how much more efficient a computer can be if you distribute the work across those 7.5 billion cores instead of cutting most of them out because you've deemed them inferior. Like, what a ridiculously bad decision that is. That's what we are doing collectively. No one chose it. It just kind of evolved and happened. But as I have said before, we are a thing that is unique about about humans as far as we can tell. You know, it's sort of hard to understand the insides of other animals, other species' minds. But a thing that is unique about humans is we can understand our own evolution, and we can understand how to reprogram it. And so I've talked about how we can be the singularity, right? We are robots programmed by our brains, but we can become self-aware and reshape our brains. The same thing is true at a societal level. We can become aware of all of the ways that our society has evolved just kind of because that's the way that things have gone, and we can choose to make them better. And there have been a lot of people who have used the idea that we can make things better to do harm, and mostly they've been able to do it through consolidation and accrual of power. And so I think it is important that as we look at how we can make things better, how we can change the system we've inherited, it's also really important to look at ways to share power widely, to empower everyone, instead of trying to keep self-determination, away from who we think are the bad people and keep it in the hands of who we think are the good people. Because anyone is capable of being bad in the right circumstances, and anyone is capable of being good in the right circumstances. And if you're congratulating yourself for the fact that you're good, then you're congratulating yourself for the fact that you have been in an environment that has shaped you in a way that you have deemed good. And if you're punishing yourself and scolding yourself for being bad, it's the same thing, right? You are overwhelmingly a product of some combination of your genetics and your environment, and neither of those things is free will. I think humans we have like a little bit of free will, and I think it's something we can practice, right? That is a big part of why I practice meditation. You are a thing that I have been thinking about recently is, there's the old expression, you are what you eat, which is, I guess, literally true on a physical molecular level. People also say you are what you have done. And I don't think that's true. I mean, look, everything is true in some extent, but I would say you are what you practice, because that is also literally true, because the habits that you practice are the things that will come out when you're not thinking. And that's when most of our decisions are made without thinking, right? If you've been watching this show, one of the things that you know is that our brains are doing everything they can to avoid the difficult work of thinking. And so if we practice turning off that switch and thinking, also, if we practice just good habits like compassion and peace and self-care, then they will become more ingrained, and they will become the habits that we practice when we're not thinking. So you are what you practice, and that's not an immediate process. It's a thing that happens over time. But it's true. So coming back to rules can get used as an excuse to avoid thinking. And if there is one thing you take away from today's episode, I would like it to be to encourage you to not let that be the case. To understand the rules in context and recognize them. It's not to say ignore the rules, but look at the rules and then think to yourself, well, how can I live in a way that I know is bringing peace and is not doing harm, regardless of what the rules, right? Like if you're practicing peace, then rules are not even a thing you really need to worry about, because you're generally like the rules are set at a standard of like the absolute bare minimum that we will tolerate. And again, that is a sliding scale depending on how wealthy you are, because the more wealthy you are, the lower the bar gets, because you can game the system better. But the rules are set at a minimum, and I'm going to encourage you to get above that bottom bar and to really try to think through the ramifications of your actions and like how it affects you, how it affects other people. And if you get defensive, here's a really important thing too. Defensiveness is pretty much always an opportunity to learn, because that is your brain trying to tell you, avoid thinking too hard about this. It says thinking about the thing that is in front of you. If you are defensive, thinking about the thing that is in front of you is a thing that your brain really doesn't want you to do. And when that happens, that means your brain has learned something without your even knowing it or choosing it. And so engaging with it, really trying to step back and step away from those feelings of defensiveness and work through them and really understand the world that you're engaging with can be an incredible source of power and peace and richness in your life. It's something that I've been trying to do, both with everyone and also in my marriage. And it's hard, and I get plenty defensive about plenty of things, but it's gotten better. It's a practice. So yeah, you can follow the rules, but don't let your entire life be shaped by what the rules are and are not, because that's not going to do peace or justice. That's going to bring a whole lot of chaos. The rules coexist with culture, with your personal experience, with who you are and who the people around you are and their experience. The whole environment is all really connected, and it's so big that our brains just focus on what's right in front of us, because otherwise our minds will explode. But it's all there. That's, the fact that you're focused on what's in front of you doesn't mean you can focus on one tree. The whole forest is still there. And what you do to that one tree affects the whole forest. So yeah, rules are fine, and rules are plenty necessary, and will be for the foreseeable future. But they are not the only thing. There is more work to be done around them. Yeah, just practice thinking a little more. I guess that's the takeaway. All right, we're home. I'm gonna go inside and have the meatball sub that Susie got me yesterday. Yes, I love a meatball sub. Okay. Say goodbye to Charlie. Goodbye to Charlie. Sorry. We'll be right back. Please like and subscribe. 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 Hi, welcome back to the good world. I have not eaten my lunch yet. I put the sandwich in the oven to reheat. And so I figured I would use this time productively, and come and talk a little more and then meditate, and then we can all go on our merry way. And I can do birthday things. So yeah, just a little further thought on the rules and the gaming of the system. I think one of the things that is challenging and frustrating, I think that basically any time you have a system, so, rules exist, systems exist to sort of turn order into chaos, chaos into order. They do a bit of both, but they are meant to turn chaos into order. Also, I'm going to turn the car on for a moment so I can get some air. Systems exist for that reason, but inevitably, people can identify inefficiencies in the system and exploit and game the system. And one example of that is what has happened in baseball, a sport that I love so much. I am wearing the hat of a defunct baseball team. And that, honestly, baseball was my introduction to data analysis, which turned into my career for more than a decade. In baseball, so the way that I got my intro into baseball data was, it was the Moneyball era, the sort of late 90s, early 2000s. Specifically, the book Moneyball came out, but also just more people were sort of using statistical methods to look at baseball and what was happening. And if you go, you can find articles that I've written on Fangraphs and on Baseball HQ and on Baseball Prospectus. I only wrote one for each of those things, but I did some analysis myself. The earlier stuff for both Prospectus and HQ is bad. I have since learned things about data analysis that I didn't understand when I was very much a beginner, and so I would pretty much completely ignore the lessons that are in there. But the Fangraphs piece was pretty good. And it's about randomness and like how things that appear to us as streakiness are actually just mostly randomness. Anyway, words. So baseball, Moneyball. Uh, the, the entire purpose of Moneyball was less about sort of using statistics and more about identifying inefficiencies in the market and exploiting those inefficiencies, right? And so the A's were one of the first teams to start looking at on-base percentage instead of batting average because they realized that a walk is a really valuable thing, and that it was being undervalued by the market, and so they could use their money more efficiently in order to make a better team on less money. And, over time, those things have proliferated, and there are a lot of things that have come out of that type of analysis that have changed the game in ways that don't always make it as entertaining as it used to be, right? Like, walks are more common, and for a certain type of baseball fan, that's fine, and that includes me. I think a walk can be fascinating because, to me, baseball is all about the batter-pitcher interaction. That's its own episode. But a lot of people find that boring. Certainly, the ball is put into play less often, right? There are a lot more walks, strikeouts, and home runs. And if what you are looking for is action, then that's a lot less action. And so that has been a big change to the game, and that is a change that comes from people figuring out how to game the system to their advantage. It's about sort of an emphasis on what is advantageous to one team as opposed to what is, entertaining sort of in the context of the purity of the sport or whatever. And baseball is at least a thing where it's kind of low stakes, right? If baseball gets less entertaining by one measure of entertaining, that's not that big a deal for the rest of society. It's not going to put people, it's not going to make people suffer a whole lot. It's not going to deprive someone of food or shelter or healthcare that they need, or freedom. It's just a game. The problem is that same thing happens all the time, constantly on an ongoing basis, and has for decades in our legal, financial, economic, legislative, governmental system. Like all of the systems of power that determine whose lives get to be good, whose lives get to be comfortable and whose lives don't, mostly. All of that is shaped by a system that is constantly being gamed. And I think it is really fascinating when people get outraged by baseball teams gaming the system, but really have no problem with people and companies gaming the system for their own advantage at the expense of other people. Like it frustrates them when the cost is the purity of a game, but they don't seem too bothered, or frankly, they don't seem to notice when the result is harming, the purity of human potential. And so I would also just encourage everyone to be conscious of that, be on the lookout for that, and let's try to figure out ways to change the system. Again, it inevitably moves towards getting gamed, but the problem is when it gets gamed, the entire thing stops serving the purpose it was originally supposed to serve. And you see that very much in our system that is sort of supposed to reward, hard work and intelligence, which is a much harder thing to define than we like to pretend it is. So is hard work, frankly. But our system is set up to reward certain things, and instead it has just rewarded people who have the resources to game it the best. In the same way that once those Moneyball tactics reached the Yankees, the Yankees are a less good example. How about the Dodgers, who are an incredibly well-funded team and also have a very smart and effective front office. The Dodgers end up being pretty dominant, and also the game is all of the things that people lamented about the ways the game has been changing. That has all happened. And so society is the same way, right? Like maybe someone without a lot of power can identify an inefficiency that they can take advantage of, But before long, someone bigger is going to identify the same inefficiency and just try to come in and Bigfoot them. And our system just rewards power and wealth with more power and wealth. And that is bad for all of us. You know, we think it's like good for the people who have power and wealth. It's not. I've said this before. Like, someone who has been forced by our society into homelessness could have had the potential to cure the kind of cancer that the CEO of a Fortune 100 company ends up getting, right? Like, just because you have a lot of wealth doesn't actually mean your life is better. And I know that because I grew up around a lot of wealth, and I've been around a lot of wealthy people, and a lot of them are deeply unhappy. My dad is actually a pretty happy guy, and he is constantly interacting with people who have a lot more money than he does, frankly. And honestly, like, the wealthiest people I have met tend to be the most insecure, the most defensive, and the most, they're unsatisfied, but like not in a good way, right? It's just constantly chasing a carrot that's dangling in front of your face that you will never be able to reach. And there is nothing satisfying about that. There's honestly nothing rewarding about that. It's just a habit that becomes so deeply ingrained that you forget to think about it. And that's the point that I reached working in politics, was feeling like I was chasing some definition of success, and I was surrounded by people who were chasing some definition of success, and the overall project was suffering massively. And the entire progressive political industry is like largely a joke. Not entirely, but largely. There are a lot of really good people in lower positions. There are a couple of good people in positions of authority, but most of the people who have gotten themselves into positions of power and authority within progressive politics, to say nothing of the rest of the world, are people who have managed to game the system to their advantage in pursuit of some status that they will never be happy with. So more wealth, more money, just more accumulation is not going to be a thing that's going to make you happy. You're just trying to fill a void. And at the end of the day, the only thing that can fill that void is yourself. And so if we worry that, we need to let people who have an incredible amount of money that they can never spend in their life have more of it, and leave it to them to decide which problems in the world are worth solving, right? Like, it's nice that well, Bill Gates is a complicated person to talk about, because it turns out that he's also been helping drug companies maintain monopolies. But even before that, right, like, it's nice that Bill Gates has been trying to solve, AIDS in Africa and things like that. But, like, I actually don't think we should have a society where Bill Gates is the person who determines what problems are worth solving. I think everyone has problems that are worth solving and that they could solve if we invested in them. And instead we don't. Instead, we just leave it up to the rich and powerful to make that decision for everyone. We put all of the decision making into a couple of those nodes, and we tell all the other nodes that they're lazy. And it's ridiculous, because they're like laziness is just a response to a system that is constantly punishing you no matter what you do. Anyway, that feels like an okay place to end this for now. So I'm gonna meditate for 10 minutes. I'm like playing with my beard a lot today. This is Susie's life. Also, fun anecdote. Last night, while I was on the Zoom call with my friends, Susie went out and got dinner. She went to this Italian market, brought home some really good fresh pasta. I'm blanking on the name of the place. La Gastronomia, if you're ever in Grass Valley, California. Really delicious. Also, Panoi, I think it's Panoi Bistro, is the Lao place we're going to for dinner, and that's also amazing, also in Grass Valley. So there you go. Grass Valley, California tourism recommendations for all of the tourists going to Grass Valley, California. Yeah, so this anecdote is just that Susie brought home pasta, and I was sitting there on the Zoom with my friends eating pasta, and it was giving them a lot of anxiety watching the pasta get closer and closer to my beard and like see whether it would go in my mouth or my beard. And they were like, what do you do? Do you usually have like a beard bib or something? And I was like, no, I get a lot of food in my beard. That's the answer. When I eat food, I get a lot of it in my beard. And sometimes Susie laughs, and sometimes Susie groans, and sometimes Susie just picks it out. She doesn't pick it out and eat it like a chimpanzee, but it would be funny if she did. So I'll let you imagine that. Anyway, meditation time. Yeah, let's build a world that is good. So I will tell you what I'm gonna do. You are welcome to join me. You are welcome to not. I would encourage you to join me if you can and sort of have a moment. But also if you are, watching or listening to this while doing something else, then I would encourage you to just take 10 minutes to appreciate the silence and try to be mindful in whatever you're doing, because mindfulness is one of the biggest ways that we overcome the ways that our brains try to avoid thinking. Right, the whole thing I was saying earlier, we use laws as a way to avoid having to think about morality. We use data as a way to avoid having to think about decisions. Your brain is trying to avoid thinking. Mindfulness can help remind yourself to think. So, what I am going to do is I'm going to sit here. I'm going to switch up the mantra today. I'm going to use something from my favorite Vietnamese Buddhist monk, Thich Nhat Hanh. And it's, instead of, normally I follow my breath all the way in, I follow my breath all the way out. Instead, it's breathing in, I have arrived. Breathing out, I am home. And thinking that in your head, in addition to the thing I talk about a lot, where it helps practice redirecting your attention and focus to where you want your attention and focus to go. It also has the benefit of, in this case, thinking to yourself, I am home, makes you feel safe. And one of the most important things is to reinforce that feeling of safety. Because the truth is, whether or not you are safe is fairly independent of whether or not you feel safe or not. And, there's some relationship and interaction, but like a lot of what we can do is just come to terms with the fact that A, when we feel safe, we aren't necessarily, and B, often when we feel unsafe, we often actually are fine. And so breathing in, I have arrived, breathing out, I am home, is a way to reinforce the I want to say parasympathetic nervous system. I think it's the parasympathetic. Jargon. I talk a lot about how jargon is terrible. One is the sympathetic nervous system, one is the parasympathetic, and the sympathetic is the anxiety, unsafety, threat detection, whatever. And I think it's the parasympathetic is the let's be calm. Yes, good feelings. And so we're gonna reinforce that. I'm actually gonna go quickly check on my sandwich, so I may record the actual meditation a little later, but we're going to see. Anyway, yeah, we'll be right back in a moment with the actual meditation part of the meditation video. Okay, see you in 1 sec. Okay, sorry for that suspense. The sandwich is fine. It's in the oven. I'm going to meditate. So yes, we're going to, breathing in, I have arrived. Breathing out, I am home. So it's going to start with this bell. And then I'm going to, as I breathe in, I'm going to think to myself, breathing in, I have arrived. As I breathe out, I'm going to think to myself, breathing out, I am home. My mind will inevitably wander, as will yours if you are doing this. That's just part of the process. That's how you get better at it and how you learn. So I would encourage you to try not to get angry with yourself. Just try to forgive yourself, right? And go easy on yourself, because we're human and our minds are made to wander. And this is a practice. You're just practicing bringing it back. So, you're going to sit here, breathing in, I have arrived, breathing out, I am home. And inevitably your mind is going to start thinking about, what am I going to have for dinner? I wonder what so-and-so is up to, whatever it is. And sooner or later, while your mind is off there doing that, you're going to think to yourself, oh, wait, I'm supposed to be meditating. And all you do is you just come right back. Breathing in, I have arrived. Breathing out, I am home. If you are getting frustrated, that's okay. That is a thing that happens, but just try to breathe through it and remind yourself that this isn't a task you need to perfect. This is just, it's just, you're just practicing, right? You're gonna, if you're practicing your jump shot, you're gonna miss sometimes, and that's okay. And getting angry at yourself is not a good way to solve it. This is just like that. Okay, I'm pushing start, so we got a 15-second countdown here. And yeah, we're gonna meditate, then I'm gonna go eat my sandwich. 8, 7, I'll see you in 10 minutes. Okay. Sorry, you got a lot of... My body made a lot of noises during those 10 minutes. All of our bodies make noises. My body makes a lot of noises. Especially because it knows it's lunchtime. It knows it's going to get a sandwich. And it really likes meatball subs. Okay. Well, we are going to end on that delightful note. This housekeeping note here. Excuse me, more noises. This is probably going to be my last. It's certainly going to be my last one of these for this week, and I'm not going to do any next week. Next week, I am going to Clear Lake, California. I'm just going to go and be by myself on a mountain with a garden, and it's going to be really nice. That I'm going to try to like meditate and do some writing. So I won't be recording these next week. And the week after, we'll see, because we're moving soon, and so things are getting a little hectic. Got to pack up the house. Got to do all kinds of stuff. But that's it. Yeah. So thank you so much for being here, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you soon enough. Bye.
All right, I'm gonna cut this cottage cheese curd. Here we go. Get ready for it to be gelatinous, 'cause that's what it does. It is a curd. Wow, it is pretty well congealed. I was a little concerned because I couldn't find my calcium chloride, which is the thing that makes the curdling process work a little better. This is great. Yay! Cheese curds. Yeah. All right, you don't need to see me do all of this, but that's what it looks like. The cheese is in the cheesecloth. Now I'm gonna dip it in the ice water. 2, 3, 4, and 5. Out of the cheesecloth. I guess it's technically not cheesecloth, it's butter muslin, but anyway, just stirring it all together here. Now it's going to go in a Tupperware, and then it's going to be breakfast. Yay!